Just 1 second. Sorry about that. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Colorado HOA Information Resource Center's April HOA Forum. The purpose of today's presentation is just to give you a high-level overview of the HOA Center's 2024 annual report, which the office is statutorily required to prepare per the Colorado revised statutes. My name is Nick Altman. I'm the HOA Information Officer. I also have David Donnelly and Amanda Lopez here, also with the division to help moderate the questions. We do have Q&A enabled today, so if you have any questions, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A feature, which should be on the bottom of your Zoom interface panel. We do respectfully request that you try and keep your questions related keep it on point to the report that we will discuss today, which is the 2024 annual report, which means this is data that the HOA Center collected in the year 2024, as opposed to 2025. Also with that, the annual report outlines the legislative changes that impacted HOAs in Colorado. So the summaries that I'll be talking about today are for the laws that were passed in the 2024 legislative session and became effective. Most of them became effective in August of 2024. So this is not our current legislative session, which is the 2025 legislative session. So with that, just a high-level overview. This office was created in 2010 and is required to collect complaints from consumers, and we track those complaints and analyze the trends that we see, which are then published into this annual report. We also track, receive, and respond to general inquiries that come in via many different channels, namely email, telephone, mail, regular U.S. mail, and also we occasionally receive, we have in-person visits to the office occasionally. To start off here real quick, I'm going to show you how you may access the annual report on our website, and I will get a quick screen share going here. Bear with me. All right, so you should be seeing a Google Chrome Google browser on your screen. So if you go to the Colorado Division of Real Estate, this is our main website, the Division of Real Estate's main website. And then you'll want to go to the HOA Center's website, which is under Division Programs at the top here. And then you scroll down to HOA Office, and you can just click on that. So once you're on the HOA Center's website, you'll scroll down to More About Us, and here you'll see office staff, our mission, vision, and core values, and then annual reports. So you click on annual reports, and here are the published annual reports dating all the way back to 2013, with the most recent 2024 being at the top there. And once you click on that, it will download a PDF file onto your browser, which you can download and view and review it at your leisure. So going back to my other screen here, and that's how you find the annual reports on our website. All right, so now you should be seeing the 2024 annual report, and we'll kind of go through this. I'm not gonna, there's a lot of text in here, and I'm not gonna read this verbatim because I do not think that's in anyone's best interest to listen along to a long, boring report. But I'll start off with just giving a high-level overview of the legislation that we saw in 2024. And let me scroll down to that section. So 2024 was a pretty busy one, and we did see quite a lot of new laws that passed and affected associations. Some were only indirectly related to HOAs. For example, um, concerning a study of the market for property and casualty insurance. That, for example, that one didn't specifically amend or change Kiowa, but nevertheless it still is related, and it is important for HOA boards and managers to be familiar with what's going on with that bill. Another one might be something like concerning streamlining the process for permitting electric motor vehicle charging systems. But then on the other hand, there were some bills that were very much so directly related to HOAs, including um, uh, concerning prohibitions on restricting fire hardened building materials in residential real property, allowing small businesses to operate out of a unit owner's unit, collect delinquency matters, uh, and a couple of other ones near the rights of the unit owner in a common interest community in relation to the collection of amounts owed. So I'll just go through these real quick and give you just a quick summary of what each is about, starting with House Bill 24-1007 here, which concerns the residential occupancy limits. So this bill was passed and it addressed residential occupancy limits. However, because common interest communities are considered private entities, not local governments, this act does not apply to HOAs. 3.2 is House Bill 24-1051. So in a nutshell, associations are still prohibited from towing a vehicle from a common parking area with less than 24 hours notice after posting a notice. The act requires towing carriers to include signage with a comprehensive list of requirements, including signage and placement. I'm not going to. It's a long and comprehensive bill. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but just to help you out, it just relates to basic signage and notice requirements for towing carriers. 3.3. And I know scrolling can be kind of hard, so I'm going to use my bookmarks tab here to navigate. So House Bill 24-1091 was concerning prohibiting restrictions on the use of fire-hardened building materials in residential real property. This does apply to HOAs, and essentially there are definitions that the bill sets forth, but fire-hardened building material means the criteria of ignition-resistant construction set forth in the International Wildland Urban Interface Code. And you can look that up yourself if you're interested in what kind of material that is. But also, HOAs may still adopt and enforce reasonable standards regarding design, dimensions, placement, and external appearance of a fire-hardened building material, as long as those standards do not increase cost by a certain percent or requires a certain review period. House Bill 24-1108 concerning the marketplace for insurance in Colorado. This bill basically requires the Division of Insurance to prepare a report on or before January 1st, 2026 to study the difficulties in obtaining insurance coverage in the state. And House Bill 24-1152. This one is also a very long and comprehensive bill related to accessory dwelling units in Colorado, and this bill allows single ADU use as an accessory to a single unit detached dwelling by June 30th, 2025, and it does apply to HOAs. There is a lot more to this bill, and actually the HOA Center is conducting a forum this week on Thursday, where we will be hosting guest speakers from the Department of Local Affairs, and I hope everybody on this call will be able to make that one. Next, we have the House Bill 24-1173, which essentially had to do with permitting electric motor vehicle charging systems. This has more to do with the way counties approach the approval process than it does anything to do with HOAs. So I'm not going to get too much into this one. One thing to keep in mind is board members, and managers, and even the homeowners. You're encouraged to contact the Colorado Energy Office to see if your association is eligible for grant funding for the construction of an EV charging system on the association's property. House Bill 24-1233. This was an important bill. This concerns the unit owners association seeking payment of debt or delinquent amounts owed by a unit owner. Sorry, just kidding. So yeah, this one changed some procedural requirements that HOAs must follow when attempting to collect that debt. High level, or HOAs no longer need to physically post a notice at the unit owner's unit. In addition to requiring communication methods, two of the following communication methods: telephone, including leaving a voice message if possible, and text message or email. So in addition to certified mail return receipt requested. So the HOA needs to follow its governing documents. It needs to follow federal, state, and local laws. And it also when attempting to collect the debt, and it needs to send its legal notices by certified mail, return receipt requested, and 2 out of 3 of those methods on your screen there. And the bill did remove the requirement to physically post a copy at the unit owner's units of the debt that the HOA is trying to collect. And this bill allows associations to charge the actual cost of the certified mail, but the charge may not exceed the actual cost of the certified mail. So if you are a community management company, you'll want to double check that your fees may not be in violation of this act. So House Bill 24-1337, moving right along here. Is that the one I just? Nope. Yeah, that's a new one. So this one is 1337 changed some requirements related to attorneys' fees and the amount that attorneys may seek to collect when defending the association's governing documents or covenants in small claims court. It also makes some procedural changes to when an HOA may foreclose on a delinquent unit or a delinquent owner. And it also outlines a right of redemption that sets forth which parties may seek to redeem the foreclosed property. It also includes some mediation requirements that HOAs are required to offer or notify the unit owner that they have a right to participate in mediation prior to the unit being foreclosed on. House Bill 24-1383 concerns declarations that form common interest communities under the Kiowa. This one basically requires, before this act passed, a declaration was only required to be executed in the same manner as a deed. Excuse me. Now, with the passage of this act, the declaration must be executed by or on behalf of the owner of the real estate. In addition, any amendment to a declaration that adds real estate to an existing common interest community must be executed by or on behalf of the owners of the real estate to be added, as shown by the records of the county clerk and recorder's office of the county where the real estate is located. Senate Bill 24005 concerns the conservation of water in the state through the prohibition of certain landscaping practices. Local government shall not prohibit, the law states that after January 1st, 2026, common interest communities, as well as local entities, such as cities, counties, special districts, and metro districts, shall not install, plan to replace any non-functional turf, artificial turf, or invasive species as part of a new development project or redevelopment project. Senate Bill 24021 exempts certain small communities from certain requirements of Kiowa. This one's kind of long or a little bit complicated, but essentially the bill takes a look at those Kiowa requirements for certain communities, limited expense, common interest communities, and consolidates those exemptions depending on the number of units that the community has and the year that the community was created. Senate Bill 24058 concerns landowner liability under the Colorado Recreational Use Statute. Let me see what I had written about that one. Essentially, this one just implements signage requirements for, one second. Yeah, so this one, so Senate Bill 24058 requires an individual who accesses land for recreational purposes to stay on the designated recreational trail, route, area, or roadway unless the owner expressly allows otherwise, or potentially be deemed a trespasser. Senate Bill 129, 24-129 has to do with protecting members of a nonprofit entity's personally identifiable information. Senate Bill 24134 concerns the operation of a home-based business in a common interest community. HOAs can no longer prohibit unit owners from operating a business within their units, or allow. The bill allows a unit owner or resident of the unit owner with the unit owner's permission to operate a home-based business at the unit owner's unit. That was a mouthful. A homeowners association may no longer seek to enforce any covenant or restriction that would otherwise prohibit the unit owner from operating a home-based business. And the bill defines home-based business to mean a business for which the main office is located at, or the business operations primarily occur at a unit. And then lastly, the last bill, Senate Bill 24145, concerning the enactment of Uniform Unlawful Restrictions and Land Records Act. So this bill, current law declares that a restriction in a land record is unlawful if the restriction is based on race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, disability, or other personal characteristics. The Act enables the Uniform Unlawful Restrictions and Land Records Act, as drafted by the Uniform Law Commission, which establishes a process for a person to remove these unlawful restrictions from a title or other document related to real property. Okay, so that summarizes the legislation in 2024 that either directly or indirectly relates to common interest communities or HOAs. Moving on to section 4 of the annual report here is our registration section. And Amanda is gonna take the reins here and go over some of the registration data and trends and what we're required to carry out as far as the state's HOA registration mandates.
Yeah, Amanda, before Amanda gets going here, everyone, I just wanted to make two quick comments about the legislative summaries that Nick just addressed. One, I think he inadvertently said that the upcoming forum is on Thursday. It's actually this Friday at 1 p.m. So I just wanted to make that clarification. We have a guest speaker coming in from the Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, that will be speaking with Nick and Amanda on that really important topic, I think. And then secondly, Nick did just, of course, identify a lot of different bills. And I would like to remind everyone that back in the late summer, after the closing of the 2024 legislative session, the HOA Information and Resource Center did provide a forum, which is available on our YouTube channel, where you can listen to a greater in-depth discussion of each and every one of those bills that Nick just identified in this prior section. So I just wanted to make those two quick comments to everyone on that's on the call.
Thank you, David. And Amanda, you should be able to take over screen share there.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, let me share that with you all. All right. Can you all see this screen? Yes, right? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, we can.
I appreciate that. Okay, so going into the registration portion of the HOA. The HOA Center continues to carry out an important aspect of its statutory mandate. So registration of HOAs or common interest communities in the state of Colorado. CIOA, again, which is the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, requires that all HOAs or common interest communities located in Colorado register with the Division of Real Estate. So upon registration of the HOA, we here at the HOA Center collect and compile a database of HOAs. Although the statutory language in CIOA does require, or it states that it requires registration, the division and the HOA Center, we do not have jurisdiction over the HOA as far as when it comes to regulatory oversight. We don't have the enforcement, of course, to register the HOAs. When it comes to, my apologies, so we do not have any jurisdiction to enforce the registration requirement. Nevertheless, though, CIOA limits the rights of a Colorado interest community to impose or enforce any liens for assessments under section 38-33.3-316. or to pursue an action or employ an enforcement mechanism otherwise available to it under 38-33.3.123, which is suspended until the association is validly registered pursuant to this section. Absent the authority to enforce the registration requirement, both the division and the HOA Center collect the statutorily required information which is expressly enumerated in CIOA. So here's a list of the information that we do collect when it comes to HOAs being registered here in Colorado. One is we have the fee for the HOAs when it comes to the registration. So that is dependent on what the HOA's annual revenues are. So if an HOA is collecting $5,000 or less in annual revenues, then there is no fee and the fee is waived. So if the HOA collects anything above the $5,000, the division collects a registration fee set in accordance with 12-10-215 of the Colorado Revised Statute. We also collect the HOA name, which is the Colorado Common or the Colorado Interest Community name, or sorry, the Common Interest Community name, my apologies, the name of the HOA's management company, if the HOA is professionally managed, the managing agent or the designated agent, physical address of the association, a valid address for the management company or the managing agent, or again, the designated agent. We also collect the email address if there is any, and this is for, again, the management company, managing agent, and of course, the designated agent. We also collect the website if the HOA community does have a website. We also collect, of course, the contact information when it comes to the phone number, and again, the email address and the number of units in the Colorado interest community. We also, of course, want to know if the HOA is self-managed or it's professionally managed. So these are few of the requirements when it comes to registering the HOAs here in Colorado. Moving along into the active HOAs, and again, these are all from 2024. As in the years past, the HOA Center, we continue to provide the public with registration information, education, and outreach. And through these efforts, we also continue to reach out to a wide range of population of Colorado just to explain the benefits of registering and providing other information available from the HOA Center. And when it comes to active HOAs in Colorado, and again, this is based on 2024. So as you can see above, it shows that 8,090 HOAs were registered as active at the beginning of 2024. That number increased to 8,362 by the end of the year. So that's an increase of approximately 3.36 when it comes to, again, the active HOAs. And this trend line indicates that on average for every month in 2024, 33 additional HOAs became active in Colorado. And they could have been either newly formed HOAs or previously expired HOAs that were managed by previous management companies or a previous board member from that HOA. And going into the expired statuses when it comes to HOAs, just as the active, we also have a graph here that will indicate and show that 3,233 HOAs were registered as expired with the HOA Center at the beginning of 2024. So that number of expired HOAs decreased to 3,165 by the end of the year. And that is a decrease of approximately 2.10%. And this trend line indicates that on average for every month in 2024, 13 less HOAs were expired. And HOA, sorry, I'm trying to scroll down here, I apologize. An HOA can expire for many reasons. And that could be, sorry, I'm trying to get into that. My apologies, I just jumped way ahead of myself. And that could be, again, for many reasons. One, we have a management company, and maybe they forgot or didn't know that they had to renew for that HOA for that next cycle, because the HOAs are they do renew annually, just as the same as with the Secretary of State. I'm going to some more here, and again, that is based on the again, active and expired HOAs from 2024. And then moving along into the population side of it, and this is coming based off of the United States Census Bureau. So the statistical data collected in accordance with Section 38-33.3-401 of the Colorado Revised Statutes are utilized to estimate the approximate number of Colorado residents who reside in a Colorado or common interest community. So as in years past, the HOA Center relies on numbers provided publicly by the United States Census Bureau. So namely, the HOA Center utilizes the average number of persons per household, which as of March 5th, 2025, 2.45 persons per household, according to the 2020 decimal census, again, published by the United States Census Bureau. At the end of 2024, the division had 8,362 active HOAs and 3,165 expired HOAs, for a total of 11,527 total HOAs registered in Colorado. Then, more in depth, of course, the total number of units reported to the division at the end of 2024, both active and expired, was 1,075,990. So by multiplying the number of units by the average number of persons per household discussed above, the total number of estimated Coloradans living here in Colorado in a HOA community at the end of 2024 equaled approximately to 2,733,015. So that is an increase of 12,079 individuals from the prior year. So as you can see, we are growing and growing. Going more into it, bear with me. Okay. So, all right. So and this is just a percentage of Colorado residents subject to, that are subject to HOA community, again, Colorado, or common interest community at the end of 2024. As you can see here, 54% are not part of a common interest community, and Colorado residents are 46% that are in a HOA community. And going into the management type of an association, as I discussed earlier on the list of the HOA the registration requirements, I discussed the management types of the HOAs. This is where that comes in, because that information is what we do collect again at the time of initial registration. Among the various data, as I mentioned, that is collected by us here at the Division of Real Estate, which is pursuant to the 38-33.3-401 in the Colorado Revised Statute, is information on the management arrangements of HOAs. So they are, again, as I mentioned, when it comes to initial HOA registration, we want to know, is it a self-managed HOA or is it a professionally managed HOA? And so the level at which a HOA may utilize the services of a professional management company varies significantly. So again, this is just a percentage, and just to show here the numbers, and I'll go more in depth with that, of who again are managed, which HOA are managed by management companies, professionally managed, and self-managed. So as you can see here above, there is a 20% of active HOAs that are self-managed. So these are, of course, HOAs that have their board, and they all have their own duties on that board when it comes to registration. So 80%, as you can see, are HOAs that are registered, that are professionally managed, and they have their management company. And this is always updated at the time of renewal of an HOA. As I mentioned before, if there is a management company that is no longer managing such HOA, then it's up to either new management company or the new HOA board member, assuming that they went self-managed. So that can happen, but again, it's up to the new HOA's designated agent to report that information to us. Moving along. Okay, and these here are self-managed HOAs. We have planned communities. Again, this is also something that we want to know at the time of registration. Are they planned communities? Are they condos? Or are they cooperatives? As you can see, 61% of the HOAs are planned communities. 35% of the HOAs are condos, and 4% are cooperatives. Professionally managed HOAs. Oh, sorry. All right, so planned communities. Let me try to scroll down one more because this thing's being a little bit picky. Okay, planned communities. 49% of the HOAs are professionally managed by are HOAs that are professionally managed. 49%, and 49% are planned communities. 50% professionally managed HOAs are condos, and as you can see, 1% is cooperative, that is managed by a management company or, as I said, professionally managed. And this is all, again, just information that is reported to us here at the Division of Real Estate at the time of registration or, again, renewal of an HOA. And this here is just a percentage of actively registered HOAs that are professionally managed from 28 to 2024. So as you can see here, it has increased, of course. And yes, so when it comes to, again, when it comes to the the percentage of the HOAs, as I mentioned, it did increase, looks like by well, we can really go into depth with that. I apologize, I missed that whole part here. Again, this is for 2018. So this was before the CAM program was terminated, right? So professionally managed HOAs was at 30, approximately 61% of the HOAs were professionally managed, while 39% were reported to be self-managed. So as you can see below, that's the information that we gathered from that. And that is really, in a nutshell, when it comes to HOA registration. Again, as you know, this information is on our website. So if you really wanted to look more into it, you're welcome to find that on our website. And I will turn it over back to Nick. Let me stop sharing.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Amanda, for talking about the registration.
Of course.
Get my screen share going here, and we'll wrap this up with inquiries, complaints, and other interesting tidbits. Amanda, can you see my screen? I should be seeing number 5 inquiries at the top.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for confirming that. So the number of inquiries that the HOA Center received actually declined last year in 2024. It is difficult to figure out why the HOA Center received 600 less inquiries than 2023. However, we believe, or we generally understand, that uptick in inquiries in 2022 and 2023 that you see on the graph there to be attributed to House Bill 221137, as well as the task force that was created in 2023. So we think that's what accounts for that uptick in inquiries, as well as the corresponding decline, because it seems that we are able to answer more and more questions, or as people generally become more aware of the new laws, as well as the task force winding down and concluding its findings, that number decreased to about 3,800. Well, not about 3,811 in 2024. We do receive inquiries from a wide variety of parties, including homeowners, board members, community association managers, attorneys, other state agencies, lawmakers, lawmakers' aides, and the like. Some referrals. Generally, what we do when we do receive these inquiries is provide relevant citations to the statute, primarily Kiowa, and also the Colorado Nonprofit Corporation Act. The HOA Center does not provide legal advice. Some of the referrals that we made or do make are to the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, the Colorado Civil Rights Division, and Colorado Legal Services. So what kind of inquiries do we receive? This doesn't change drastically from year to year, but as you can see, we receive a wide variety of inquiries, and it can be difficult to categorize every single one of them, which is why general inquiry is compiled at the top of this list. So 150 of these inquiries were not able to be parsed or organized into a common category. For example, I wrote down here, we did receive one inquiry from a university. One of their graduate research students was trying to compile a list or figure out how to associate a certain property to a specific HOA. And we do not have the capability to do that. However, a lot of times you'll see on sites like Redfin or Trulia or Zillow, the information that's added to the MLS database contains community information or HOA information specific to that property address. But beyond general inquiries, the most common inquiry we receive relates to records request. That is, which records are unit owners entitled to which records are board members required to produce upon a properly submitted records request. What happens when a unit owner does submit a proper request, but the association doesn't comply with the request? What are the remedies available to unit owners? And also whether any specific document falls under the statutes. So somebody might send in a document or an example of a financial report or a financial document and ask, is this record part of Kiowa? Is this required by HOAs to disclose to unit owners? While we can't provide legal advice, we can't exactly say yes or no. We do direct them to the part of Kiowa that does address their inquiry. As you can see, so the number just decreases. You know, we had some with what happens once we receive a complaint, or what does the HOA Center do with HOA complaints? As we always harp on, and as we've said many times, the HOA Center doesn't have investigative or authority to intervene in complaints. The HOA Center is only statutorily required to collect the complaints, track them, and report them in the HOA Center's annual report. Any other change or authority granted would need to be determined by the Colorado General Assembly, our lawmakers. Amending documents is also pretty big. Like how do we go about amending the Declaration of Covenants? What are some of the restrictions with amending the bylaws, or what needs to be included in the bylaws? Does the board have the ability to change the rules and regulations without a vote from the unit owners, and so on and so forth? And most everything else from there is pretty straightforward. Okay, let's go on down to number, nature. Some Kiowa General. So when we're talking about some of these categories, Kiowa General typically means, the way we categorize it, if a question related to the role of the HOA Information Center, the applicability of Kiowa, if a inquiry is categorized as need HOA contact information, that might be a potential home buyer asking for how to go about contacting the HOA board, or how do I get their telephone number or email address. It might be a existing owner asking for the principal address of the current CAM, or it simply might just be a current homeowner wanting to know who their current property manager is, because they might have a hard time or difficult time ascertaining that information. Assessment collections, typically, sometimes we receive inquiries related to, I would like to receive a payoff statement for what I owe my HOA, and the HOA Center doesn't collect that information. A board member might inquire about how to file a lien on a delinquent owner, or a prospective buyer might ask, what are the average HOA dues for all of the HOAs in Cherry Creek in 2022, for example. And then finally, meeting. This doesn't include all the categories, but we just included some examples here. Meetings might be something. What does Kiowa say about meetings? Does my HOA have to hold annual meetings? Is it required, or is it optional? Things of that nature. So that is our inquiries. When we're talking about HOA complaints, in 2024, the HOA Center received 300 complaints from 300 unique individuals or parties or complainants. As you can see here, there's really not a whole lot of trend, so it's kind of difficult. I mean, you see here in November of 2024, we received only 9 unique complaints compared to 38 in March of 2024. This might relate to perhaps the HOA's fiscal year and maybe their budget approval process. So if more HOAs have their budget approved or presented for approval in October, November, just well, probably earlier than that, August or September, there might be more consumers file a complaint because their HOA didn't properly pass the budget, or it's kind of difficult to say. It's what might result in a high peak compared to a low number in November. Maybe the holidays had something to do with it, but that's the data that we did collect for 2024. Let's see. So the HOA Center also accepts complaints anonymously, and that's about 1/5 of all of our complaints are submitted anonymously. Why might somebody submit a complaint anonymously? Typically because it's that person or party might be concerned about retaliation. So that was about 1 out of 5 were submitted anonymously in 2024. We discussed some of the complaint categories are pretty much very similar to how we categorize our inquiries, except as you can see on the list here, we accounting, finances, declarant not following through with transfer of control. These are just the most commonly received complaints that the HOA Center has received over the years, and that they've been categorized into these specific areas or elements, if you will. There hasn't been a whole lot of change in 2024 related to the most common types. That's going to be communication with homeowners and board, which most often involves a board not communicating with the owners when they're discussing special assessments, or when any operational decision made by the board when they're holding secret meetings or not, or just not being transparent. The unit owners demand transparency. We complaint kind of discrimination, elections and voting, complaints related to health and safety in the community, the community manager or the board either not properly enforcing the covenants or not enforcing the covenants at all. We see many complaints related to that. Insurance, the high price of insurance, and it becoming more difficult for not only homeowners but boards as well, and the HOA community to secure coverage on the property and the common elements. Maintenance is a big concern. The board not conducting maintenance according to its governing documents, what it's supposed to be doing, or just conducting maintenance wrongly. Nuisances in the community like noise complaints, or a neighbor being noisy, or there's a lot of different things that can be classified as a nuisance. Parking issues with is this spot this parking spot was afforded me when I purchased my property, yet for some reason the board is giving me citations for parking in my own parking spot. Reserve accounts, the way that reserves are transferred to and from the reserve account, or whether the HOA should be maintaining a certain balance, but it's not, again, according to its governing documents. Use of amenities, the board not following through, not informing homeowners how long the amenity will be closed or for what purpose, and I believe that was a law that was passed in 2022, granting owners reasonable access to amenities or common elements. So those are the complaint categories that we use. This section on complaint category by region is nothing too new, other than the HOA Center has organized regions of Colorado by numbers. So I mean, you'll see Denver, I believe that's number 1, and Colorado Springs number 7. It's just an easier way for us to organize our complaints. Here you can see the numbers per each region. So not surprisingly, the most populous regions received the most complaints, 431 for Denver and surrounding areas, 240 for, 240 for Denver, downtown Denver, 431 for Denver surrounding areas, 108 for the front region, 140 for South Central. That's like, Colorado Springs, Pueblo area. And the mountain regions will be typically Northwest ski resorts, Northwest. A lot of the mountain complaints that we receive relate to short-term rentals, as well as land use issues. So by complaint by community type, essentially breaks down complaints depending on the type of community that the complainant is submitting a complaint from, if that makes sense. So Kiowa identifies mainly three different types of communities. You have of course, your condominiums, which we commonly think of as tall high rises downtown, and also townhomes and duplexes. The state of Colorado has a very, very small number of cooperatives. And the other main type of community is planned communities, which we typically think of as our single family home. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. Leave it to Beaver type of neighborhood. We also categorize complaints by size of community. So as you can see here, there is one interesting trend in this graph, I thought. The number of complaints seems pretty typical or straightforward as the number of units in the community increases, right? So the very small communities has those community HOAs with between 1 and 10 units has a low number, 38 in 2024, and that number goes up to those medium-sized communities between 101 and 500 units to 467 complaints. But then we did see that number drop substantially once you get into those large HOAs between 501 and 1,000 units. This is also kind of difficult to explain. However, in my own personal opinion, I think that's because these larger communities have more robust dispute resolution processes, or there's a more defined way for owners and board members to put forth their dispute and have the dispute resolved at a more local level compared to some of those smaller HOAs. By complaints by management arrangement, we see most of the complaints come through for those communities that are professionally managed compared to those that are self-managed. That doesn't necessarily mean that the CAMs are all bad or that it's all because of the CAM. That could just mean that a lot of HOAs that are professionally managed also tend to have more units and more disputes and problems in those communities. By respondent type, again, I'm not going to read through all this text, but it's here I thought it was important to mention that just because we see most complaints directed toward the board in this pie chart, specifically 74% of complaint categories were directed toward the board as compared to only 26% to the manager or management company. That shouldn't mean that, oh wow, CAMs are doing a good job. See, I told you so that it was the board. A lot of the times, well, in almost all cases, the board is responsible for overseeing the actions of the CAM. The board always has oversight of what the CAM is or is not doing, and it should be exercising that oversight responsibly and with the care of a fiduciary entity. So if a board is not doing that, if they're not exercising authority over the CAM, then they will also be marked. That will be a complaint marked against the HOA board for not properly supervising the CAM. So that's just kind of one. It's important to keep to look at this data from different angles and not rush to conclusions. Complaints by issue. this is pretty much the same as the types mentioned above, but just broken down to specific numbers, like how many actual complaints did we receive that related to communication. That was 207 complaints. And we had 52 complaints related to regulatory compliance and registration, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you may have some additional questions, and I may not have covered everything, but please feel free, if I didn't answer a question related to the inquiries or complaints that we received, feel free to email us, and I'd be happy to answer your question by email. But moving forward, with the HOA Center in 2024 and beyond, we will continue to focus our outreach and education, trying to focus on specifically the board members and making sure that board members understand their roles and responsibilities of serving their community and what it means to be that fiduciary agent. We also will continue to conduct HOA forums once per month, and we are also expanding our efforts to properly respond and efficiently respond to in-person presentation requests. It is a staff of just 2, so we do try our best here to fulfill our state requirements. This chart here just says how many attendees we had for our HOA forums in 2024. The most highly attended HOA forum was the one on board member roles and responsibilities. There's no date on this one, but dates on these. But if you go to our website, you can see the date that we put these on under education and outreach, recent HOA forums and presentations. Again, just because we had only 4 attendees for one of our Spanish-speaking outreaches doesn't mean that our Spanish population here is not interested in HOA matters. It likely means that more outreach in that area is needed. Our goals for 2025 and beyond, expanding our Spanish outreach efforts, and also trying to attend more in-person presentations. And also our website does include a useful tool for a translate tool that allows the website to be translated in over 130 different languages. And the last part of the report includes important resources for our readers. So this is a constantly expanding list. We try and include the most important and useful resources for our readers and to consumers, for community association management companies, unit owners, and for those who may be interested in learning more about and advocating for change. All right, so that concludes our report, our annual report. David, was there any questions in there did I thank you for correcting me on the date for the HOA for this week's HOA forum. It's Friday, not Thursday. I don't know why it was Thursday, but it's certainly Friday. Any other questions I missed there while we're wrapping up here?
Only one pending right now, Nick. Although we have been answering some questions in the as they've come through as well. One individual has a pending question right now, which is just, what are the average annual assessments by dollar amount broken up between professional management and self-managed companies or associations? Excuse me. I'll answer that one for y'all. We do not collect information on the annual assessments or monthly or quarterly, however they are paid, assessments in communities. That is not something that specifically has been directed. And furthermore, that changes pretty significantly for some communities, especially when you have a situation such as a special assessment, maybe because of a roof repair or something of that sort as well. So we don't collect that information. Generally speaking, for if you're looking to get some information on that, you may want to consider reaching out to the Community Associations Institute, CAI. They, I believe, do collect information pertaining to that. But also, probably the best advice is to go and talk to a similarly situated community. If I live in a high-rise condominium, talk to another high-rise condominium, because they have the most similar amenities to you. If I'm a resident in a single family residence on 5-acre parcels, talking to a high-rise condominium about how much they pay in assessments is pretty much not worth anything at all, because those two types of communities are completely different. So talking to a similar type of community, both in age as well as the nature and the amenities and size also of the communities, is probably going to be your best bet in order to collect some information about whether or not your community has higher than average, lower than average types of assessments out there.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
Yeah. Another individual, Nick, maybe you could pull this up. Another individual asked for how to get a downloaded copy of this report, which you did show a little bit earlier in this presentation on how to access it, and everyone, of course, can download a copy of the report from our website as well.
Yeah, I can do that real quick here. I think I should be sharing my screen. You should see Zoom right now. All right, so if you just go to a web browser, you go to Google, you can navigate to the Colorado Division of Real Estate's website. So you can just type in Colorado Division of Real Estate. Then go to Division Programs, drop down, go to HOA Office. Scroll down to Annual Reports on the right here, in the middle right section of your screen. And voila, there you have all the annual reports published by the HOA Center dating back to 2013. Alrighty, so if there's nothing else, Amanda, I don't think, Amanda, you had any other registration related questions?
No, thank you, David, for answering those questions. So I appreciate you.
One quick thing I was going to mention about the registration is there's about 8,300, 83 active HOAs or somewhere around there, and about 3,000 expired. Just because an HOA is expired doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So in reality, there is about 11,000 HOAs in the state of Colorado. So, all right. Great. Thank you, everybody, for attending our annual report. Feel free to send us a question, but in the meantime, we hope to see you at our next HOA forum on Friday, April 25th at 1:00 p.m. to join us for a discussion on accessory dwelling units. Great. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great afternoon.